This video is sponsored by Manscaped. Aw, come on, Lego, you can't do this. You can't make a full 10-minute video with a product placement in it based off of one sentence that Elliotte Friedman says on a podcast. Yeah, you can. Because when it comes to things like these, I know it's a very small little update. It very literally is one sentence, but the possibilities of conversation are pretty much endless with this kind of thing. So, our update today is coming on the Jack Eichel trade front. And come on, you know who exactly this guy is, you know what's going on here, you know the situation. He's on a bad team, he wants to win, he wants a surgery, the team doesn't want him to get the surgery, he's a really good player, and he's locked up long term. But the asking price in a trade-like scenario for Jack Eichel was pretty high. Renaud Lavoie reported earlier this year that the price would be upwards of 4 first-round caliber assets, and we had a little bit more of a narrowing down of that price later on when we learned from other sources that the Buffalo Sabres may be asking for a top 6 forward, a top prospect or 2, a top 4 D-man, and a high draft pick as well. Very, very steep price for Jack Eichel. But, according to Elliotte Friedman in the recent episode of the 31 Thoughts podcast, he says that the price may actually be going down. The price is still high, he says. Not as high as early in the process, but still high. Now, this tweet here, the update says that we're just going to keep on waiting, and that's pretty much what we're going to do here. But what I wanted to do here in this video is talk about the possibilities as to how much that price could be decreased. Because if Friedman says it's still high, but not as high, you have to start wondering, okay, where are the Buffalo Sabres lowering their expectations? Are they saying, okay, it's no longer a top 6 forward we need, it's a top 9 forward instead. It's a middle 6 guy who can play, I don't know, maybe second penalty kill or whatever. It's a serviceable top 6 defenseman instead of a top 4 defenseman we're asking for. Maybe it's not even a top 10 draft pick anymore. Maybe it's a little bit later on in the rounds. There are a whole bunch of conversations here to ask about Eichel and the magnitude as to which the trade price appears to be decreasing. But before we get into any of that, I will say this right here. The fact that it is decreasing, yeah, it's not surprising. The price was absolutely huge, like a week ago when we had all those updates. Imagine trading away a top 6 forward who is somewhat young, maybe 25, 26 or younger, a top 4 defenseman in that same age range, a top 10 pick, and more prospects for what is essentially one guy whose health isn't guaranteed, who still wants to do this surgery, and who is only really going to accept a trade and be happy with a trade if he gets sent over to a team that is legitimately good. Now, I know Jack Eichel is the kind of player that you can build your franchise around. If your team is not good, you add Eichel, all of a sudden, boom, you have a lot better of a chance towards potentially being good. But Jack Eichel is just one guy, and this isn't the NBA, where one guy can go from team to team to team. No matter who the team is, he takes them to the second or third round, wins a few championships here and there. It's not like that in hockey. Connor McDavid has not done anything with the Oilers aside from getting all those individual achievements and losing to the Anaheim Ducks in the second round that one year. The fact is, if a team is going to go out there and make a Jack Eichel trade that Eichel himself would like, it's gotta be a good team already. If he gets sent over to Detroit or Columbus, I mean, Columbus is kind of debatable, mostly because I think that team was kind of underperforming this year. Let's talk about that in another video, maybe being released in a few hours from now, who knows? But if it's a bad team acquiring Eichel, who knows what this guy's patience and tolerance is going to be towards being in another potentially rebuilding situation. What teams are out there in the NHL that are bad? Detroit? Yeah, I guess so. Ottawa? Yeah, I guess so. These teams have great futures, but for now, they're kind of down there in the dumps. Vancouver, maybe? Okay, no, we're not going to talk about Vancouver. But if Eichel goes to any of these teams, who's to say that he's not going to feel the same way in a new organization than he felt with Buffalo? Sure, he can get a whole bunch of points, he can win all these trophies, all these awards and whatever, but if his team is not making the playoffs, the guy is still going to be upset. And so, the only caliber of teams that should actually go out there and even try to make a trade for Eichel, in my opinion, are the teams that actually have stuff to compete for. Sure, the Kings and the Rangers may not be playoff locks at this point in time, but they're in that tweener kind of role. Maybe adding a Jack Eichel could really boost up their stock and push them into the playoffs, a final wild card or whatever, to the point where Eichel finally plays in the playoffs and he tries to show him off on that stage. Minnesota's the new one. They bought out Suter and Parise. Awesome. They have all this cap space. They still have to get Kaprizov. We'll talk about that in a later video as well. But Jack Eichel could go over there and really help out that squad. So going over the trade front, I really wanted to explore just kind of how much the trade price has decreased. But before we do that, let's give our attention to today's video sponsor. Summer is coming. Are you ready to unveil your beach bod? You're in luck, because our friends at Manscaped have just launched their 4th generation performance package, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0, the GOAT of all hair down there trimmers. It's got a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce trimming accidents. It's got a 4000 LED spotlight, and it's waterproof. The Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Weed Whacker to chop your worst weeds up to the top of your nose and ears. Not to mention the Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver, the liquid formulations to keep your downstairs all cool. There's even a travel bag and some boxer briefs included. Join 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get the Performance Package 4.0. Now here's where the benefits come in. You'll get 20% off and free shipping if you use code LEGOROCKS99 at checkout. That's right, 20% off and free shipping with the code LEGOROCKS99. Escape the shrubs and the weeds this summer and shine with Manscaped. And so as we said earlier in the video, a top 6 forward, a top 4 defenseman, a top draft pick, and prospects. If that price is decreasing, I think all of a sudden the better teams around the league, the top of the food chain kind of teams, start to get a little bit more intrigued. Okay, it's not a top 6 forward anymore, you guys want a top 9, a middle 6 guy instead? Alright, well now we have something we can work with. Oh, you don't want a draft pick anymore that's in the top 10? Well, we have this, I don't know, 20, 21st, 25th overall pick, maybe this stuff will suffice. A top 4 D-man? Hey, we've got too many D-men that we care about, but a top 6 D-man, maybe that's something we can talk about here. And it really gets interesting to me because all the teams that have been listed before by Pierre LeBrun and Elliotte Friedman and all that as potential suitors for Jack Eichel, all of a sudden, these teams have a little bit more leverage in my mind when it comes to making potential trade offers and seeing what it is the Buffalo Sabres would want. Because all of a sudden, if the Sabres are not demanding a king's ransom anymore, it's easier for teams to say, okay, well, we can make a trade with Eichel now without sacrificing as much of a chunk of our team than we thought we would need to 2 weeks ago. So, all of a sudden, you know, the Flyers, the Blue Jackets, the Wild, the Kings, the Rangers, they have more firepower. Especially teams that have a lot of young capital to begin with, like the LA Kings, for example. It would be easy to say, okay, well, you guys are asking for less. Well, we still have a whole bunch of prospects and whatnot that we feel we could give up in an Eichel trade, so why not take this on instead, Buffalo? The Philadelphia Flyers have a little bit more breathing room because, hey, they're getting rid of Jakub Voracek. They already informed him he's not going to be on the team anymore, so there's some freed up space too. Obviously, Chicago is kind of in there too, because we had the rumors earlier on that Kirby Dach or whatever might be included. Obviously, the Blackhawks being focused on Seth Jones at the moment kind of changes that perception, I guess, but the same factors still apply. If the price is getting lower, other teams need to be on their toes, paying attention to what the Sabres' asking price would be, and trying to match things up, because what they were thinking about maybe 2 weeks ago may be more than what it takes at this time. So, for Elliotte Friedman coming out here giving us this little update, I really do appreciate it because it kind of gets the gears turning in my head as to what a potential Eichel trade would look like. Because obviously, you know, we always try to come up with the proposals, Zegras, Drysdale, a 3rd overall, I don't know, Byfield, Turcotte, etc., a few other players, Lafrenière, Kakko. We have all these offers in our heads as to what it should be, but there's only going to be one Jack Eichel trade. Or at least, if he doesn't get traded another time down the line, there's only going to be one. And whatever it is that we're thinking about, the proposals that we have in our heads here, it's all going to be for naught once we have the real trade go down. And so if that trade involves less than what we're projecting things to being today, then hey, Good on whichever team is acquiring Jack Eichel. Maybe bad for the Sabres because sure, they do want to get full value for this guy, and it's well within their right to keep the price as high as it is. We've made a video about that before, talking about how when Eichel is healthy, he is all that, as we said, could be one of the best American players ever if he continues down the path that he has gone down, and he recovers fully to the best of his body's ability. If he fixes everything up, he could be a franchise-defining guy. So for the Sabres, the biggest part is trying not to lose this trade. It's just, if the price is way too high and you're not going to make that trade, do you bite the bullet and say, okay, well, I guess we're just going to give up less, instead of just not making a trade at all? I'm honestly kind of for that conversation too, debating the idea as to whether or not Eichel could just stay in Buffalo, because all the stuff we know about Jack Eichel and the situation in Buffalo and all that, it's leading us all to believe that a trade is going to come. But the Sabres are under no technical obligation to do so. So, who knows? Maybe if the price gets a little bit too low and teams aren't biting, maybe they just sit it out. But in reality, your guess is as good as mine. So talk to me in the comments what you think about Elliotte Friedman coming out here and saying that the trade price for Eichel is not as high as it was, but it is still pretty high. We're getting the inklings of a price decrease, and we'll see how far down this goes before a team is willing to pull the trigger. Talk to me in the comments what you think. If you enjoyed this video, Rumours 99, and bye.